It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I update you on the progress of my main decks. And today, we're looking at my most recent updates for Alela, Artful, Provocateur. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're talking about Alela, a deck that I really enjoy, mainly because it's allowed me to play some of the things that I've really wanted to play, but just not in other decks. Alela started off very enchantment heavy until back in the Brothers War, was messing around with the Esper Urza from that set and realized that, well, as much as I like Urza, Alela does artifacts so well and can facilitate them better. So I've kind of been spinning the deck more towards them versus the enchantments. So the key part about Alela, right? Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Other creatures we control with flying get a little bit of buff. But it says whenever we cast an artifact or enchantment spell, we make a 1/1 fairy. And that's where the crutch of this deck comes. We want to play as many of those as we can, net as many fairies as we can, and basically win the game with our flying army. And that's the deck's designed to do. Play a bunch of them to get fairies, preferably as cheap of artifacts as possible with an asterisk on that. Draw cards, get access to more things, and then play enchantments and artifacts that are going to grow our fairies so they hit even harder in the air to do massive damage to our opponents. But there's a lot of ways to approach artifacts and enchantments, and I think one of the key things that it works out so well for Alela is that all of your mana rocks, right, make you a fairy. So I'm showing Arcane Signet here, but think about it. You have all your signets, all your talismans. In my list, we're playing things like Mox Amber and Mox Opal because the deck is a bracket 4, and I've intended it to be a higher end deck. So we're playing some fast mana, not interestingly, not even all the fast mana that would normally be on the game changer list. But the point there is that we are playing artifacts that can come in for cheap. Something like Cranial Plating adds a fun threat out of nowhere, allowing you to attach it at instant speed to a creature and give it +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Of course, a little bit better when you could attach it to Alela. Alela attacks somebody that can't block it and either equip it or attach it at instant speed, take big damage, gain a bunch of life. Encroaching Mycosynth is actually here for a card in the deck that I think we're going to cover on the next slide, Time Sieve. Time Sieve is an artifact that says you could sacrifice 5 other artifacts to take an extra turn after this one. So the goal of something like Mycosynth is to turn all of my non-land permanents into artifacts, especially my tokens. Then they are, right, sacrificable to take an extra turn and, extend our game even farther. Phyrexian Altar can sack our fairies for mana. A great ability if we can continually put more things out to make our fairies better. Skull Clamp is a little bit of a nombo with some of the buffs that we do have in the deck, but I think there's a lot of the times where if we can see Skull Clamp early enough, or we go get it off of something like Urza's Saga, we can actually get some card draw in the early game, and then as we draw into our other things, then Skull Clamp's done its job, and it's not that big of a deal. Strixhaven Stadium is an alternate win con in the deck, but it's also just going to help by making a fairy. It says whenever we deal combo damage to an opponent, we put a point counter on it. Then if it has 10 or more point counters on it, remove them all, and that player loses the game. This is a nice way to potentially start knocking players out one by one if we have enough fairies, or just really make sure that we're giving a threat to our opponents for all these fairies laying around. Unlike in my Ovika deck that we're going to talk about next week on the channel, I've actually, in my Ovika deck, managed to knock all 3 players out at once with a Strixhaven Stadium. I've never done it in Alela because Alela focuses on getting the tokens a little bit bigger, whereas Ovika is always focused on going wide. There's Time Sieve that we were talking about, sacrificing 5 artifacts to take an extra turn. We are still playing some enchantments, right? Enchantments are still very useful. Things like All That Glitters, right, which can buff Alela for each artifact and enchantment we control. Anointed Procession, right, doubles up in the number of tokens we make. Bitter Blossom makes us a fairy at the start of each of our turns and loses us a life, which isn't that big of a deal since Alela has lifelink, and we have way to give lifelink to our other creatures with things like Whip of Erebos. Caretaker's Talent is going to give us some card draw. It took me a little bit to put Caretaker's Talent in here finally, but I think I realized I was kind of dumb for not doing it because we're going to inherently make one at least once a turn, so the draw is just going to kind of be there. And then if you have the extra mana later in the line, you just take it up to 3 and give everybody the buff. Into the Pit was a card, as soon as I read it, I kind of figured like was going to be perfect for Alela. So you look at the top card of your library at any time, and you could play spells from the top by just sacrificing a non-land permanent to choose other costs. We could just sack a fairy to play something off the top, which could just make us another fairy, right? Ideally, I think in my head, you're sacrificing a fairy you've already made this turn so that it doesn't have haste anyway, right? And then you're kind of just getting more value out of the things that you're making. Mirror Maid can come in as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield, so we can either double up on one of our key enchantments or artifacts, or just copy one of our opponents, and then it casts, the cast counts. Shark Typhoon makes some extra attackers. Remember that Alela gives its buff to everything with flying, not just to fairies, so we can actually benefit from Shark Typhoon making us some extra sharks to block. And then some of our buffs aren't actually about just being specifically fairies, so those sharks can gain those buffs too. And then, of course, since we're targeting, the goal up here was never to mince our budget, we could play things like Smothering Tide to gain advantage right from our opponents drawing cards and funding us more mana to do all the crazy things we want to do. But I think I gained a lot of success in this deck when I started to realize what the deck really needed, and the thing to get it through the middle stages of really crafting what I wanted the deck to turn into was card draw. Because Alela is very good at dumping what you start in your opening hand in your first few turns that you draw onto the battlefield. But the truth is, how are you going to keep enough in your hands to keep playing, getting more fairies, and doing that? And there's a lot of ways to do it. I think some of the easiest ways are drawing cards when our creatures hit somebody in combat. Almost all of our fairies are in the air. So is Alela. So we already have that natural evasion over some players. And we most of the time end the game in combat anyway. So I feel like it just makes sense to draw cards when we hit players. Now, as soon as the One Ring came out, and this is actually my only deck that I played the One Ring in, I was like, it just makes a ton of sense. You can gain enough life with Alela to outlast the cost of the One Ring burning you, and you can just start drawing more cards, putting more things down, and just ramping your board forward, right? Kindred Discovery's a dangerous card draw outlet, and it can get out of hand because it happens on when something comes in or attacks. So right, anytime you play something, you make a fairy that's going to draw you, but most of the time, it's that last bastion you need to just start churning through your library and getting into more pieces, especially key more combo-like pieces. Lord Skitter's Blessing comes in and makes a wicked roll. We most of the time put this on Alela, and then at the beginning of our next draw step, we lose a life and draw an additional card. This also works well with all that glitters and some of the other auras we have, so that if let's say, for example, that wicked roll gets taken off somehow, or Alela dies and comes back, we can still fulfill that and get that additional draw. And then last time I updated the deck, not this time, I just threw Necropotence in. I felt like we're already in this level of power level. There's no reason not to. We have the life to pay, and I don't think it really matters in the grand scheme of things. Like, I think Alela can afford to pay 6 to 10 life to draw a bunch of cards and just gain it back with her ability. And with all these other draw effects mixed in, right, it's not going to be that big a deal to skip our draw step. But I think where the deck really goes from really good to dangerous is when we start growing all of our flyers that already have this natural piece of evasion. I think probably my favorite buff in the deck is Coat of Arms. Again, each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that has at least one type in common with it. This gets brutal for our opponents when we have so many fairies as we do. Yes, you hand a little bit of the buff to your opponents, but my philosophy has always been, if I can benefit from it more than you can, it's well worth it for me to put out. Banner of Kinship just got that release in Foundations, and it feels like a no-brainer, especially when you get to make a fairy off the cast right before it comes in, so you at least have that extra one, right? And then the nice thing about the banner is that no matter how many fairies you are, they get that buff. I think Coat of Arms is more explosive because it's more exponential, right? And the buff that you get. Whereas banner, if I play this when I have 6 fairies and then you board wipe me and I start putting fairies back down, they're just going to have +6/+6, right? So you kind of see the difference. It's nice to have both of them. Of course, one is better than the other. Patchwork Banner is a mana rock, but it also buffs all of our fairies, which is great. Talk about Whip of Erebos giving all of our creatures lifelink is huge. Because I think it's going to really set us apart, and it kind of gets it out of the game where really our only real threat is being drained out with abilities or commander damage, right? And we can most of the time outrace some decks by just being in the air and being evasive. Of course, we're playing Cathar's Crusade because why wouldn't we? We're making multiple Faeries a turn, meaning we're growing our board and getting them to be real threats. I've always liked Dollmaker Shop as an option to get some tokens to stay back to block. But I think the really great part of Dollmaker Shop is Porcelain Gallery to turn all our creatures into XXs, where X is the number of creatures we control, including Alela, just turning them into massive threats, and then you start adding any of these buff enchantments on top of it, and now you're talking about just scary fairies in the sky that can end the game really quickly. Things like Favorable Winds that actually is going to buff all creatures with flying we control. Same thing with something like Flowering the White Tree, which affects all of our creatures, whereas Etchings is going to only affect the type we choose. And again, most of the tokens we're making are fairies. So at the end of the day, these are all going to be beneficial for them. But you do have those things like the toys and those shark tokens that are going to get access to all of the typo buffs, but they are still going to get access to some of these other buffs, which is still important. Intangible Virtue going to give all of our tokens +1/+1 in Vigilance. One of my favorite game enders, if you can get it down, is Legion Loyalty, giving all of our creatures Myriad. This basically means you take your board of fairies, attack them at one person, and each other player gets that same board of fairies attacking them. This gets twice as good when you have things like Banner of Kinship or Coat of Arms down now, because you're probably just out killing the table and creating some of that. Now, yes, Legion Loyalty is an 8-mana enchantment, but we have the mana to get there. We have treasures and things like that to get there. And it's one of those things that, on the right board state can just end the game. And then Starlight Spectacular is a card that I had to probably way late after Infinity came out, but I think when you realize its upside, it can be really good. So at the start of your combat, you choose creatures you control one at a time until you've chosen all your creatures. Each of them gets +1/+1 for each creature chosen before it. So what I always like to do is start with the fairies that came in this turn, right? They can't attack, and move my way most of the time to Alela, right? Because we want Alela to be the biggest lifelink threat, biggest potential commander threat. And then, you have a chance to just gain a ton of life and sneak in for some extra damage, and it's well worth the 4 mana considering how wide we're going to go. But on our most recent pass, I think I tried to care about Time Sieve just a little bit more. Time Sieve was always in the deck, but the truth is, I was actually only running Mycosynth. I'd completely forgot about Biotransference. It was in the deck before, and I'd taken it out when I tried to spin more towards enchantments. But I was realizing that, hey, when you make all your creature spells artifacts, that means even the few creature spells we have in the deck that are could be artifacts, which could also trigger Alela. But the main thing there is also that now you're getting these Necron tokens every time you cast an artifact spell, which is, again, more tokens for the purposes of blocking, more tokens for the purposes of sacrificing to Time Sieve. There's a lot of ways to look at Biotransference rather than its first ability just turning anything into artifacts. But again, the point of Biotransference, right, is turning those fairy tokens into artifacts so you could sacrifice them to the Time Sieve. And it won't take very long with a Time Sieve out and our opponent's tapped out and, or in a bad position to end a game. I mean, the truth is, in the games that I've won with Time Sieve, it's been 1 to 2 turns maximum. The truth is, you take a massive attack, you Time Sieve, and you take a massive attack again, and most of the time, it's overwrought right there. We've had Swift Boots in the deck for a while, but I decided to add the Greaves in. The Greaves can be a little bit harder in this deck than the Boots because we actually want to target Alela with some things, all the glitters, cranial plating, things like that. So it can be a little bit tough with the Greaves, but I think the Greaves are really there to protect Alela because as soon as you play this deck once, you know that Alela is the linchpin of the strategy, right? And you want to make sure that you're taking her out. So, I mean, it makes more than enough sense why we'd want to put, more of that Greaves style ability in there to protect her. But I've said it before on the shade, I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. Although I've been playing Alela for a long time, I'm always looking at what the deck needs. What does it need next? And all 3 of these cards on the screen are actually cards that have been in the deck before. They were taken out to try new cards, but I think they're all still really relevant. Heraldic Banner comes in and lets you choose a color. Creatures you control that color get +1/+0, and then you add a mana of the chosen color. So most of the time I was calling blue because the fairies that Alela makes are blue. This is kind of weird, right? Because Bitter Blossom makes black ones, but the truth is Alela's blue, right? And then all these fairies are blue. You're getting a buff and a mana rock, right? Which I feel like is important. I kind of took it out for Patchwork Banner when it came out because I was like, yeah, it affects all the fairies a little bit better. And I've never seen Alela really have a problem with mana. And if that ever is the case, maybe we start thinking about bringing the banner back in. but you know, I didn't see the need for it. I really like Copyland. Most of the lands in the deck are not legendary, so we're not worried about it. And I like the idea of Copyland because if you have anything that can come in and copy enchantments, or for a time I was playing Court of Vantress, which can copy enchantments, right? If you're the monarch, you could copy land, right, and have it come in as a copy of another land, and now you're just ramping. You know, there's I think copy land is something I'm willing to bring back in because I really like it, and it's nice to be able to copy a key land or a tri land if you need it, you know, and just have it for future turns. And then rally the ranks, just buffing fairies. Again, it probably needs to come back in, but I wanted to try some new cards and kind of see how they function first, and see if we need more of those buffs. And if we do, then we will pretty obviously bring it back in. But let's get into our play. Remember, the goal of playtesting on the channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to make our best plays of our deck. It's to get some opening hands, understand how we're going to set up our game plan, and talk through it. So here we're keeping a 3-lander with an Esper Sentinel, Mox Amber, Zora Signet, and Mirror Maid. So not bad. We have lots of ways to have some extra mana. Esper Sentinel could sneak us through some extra card draw on the opening turns, depending on what our opponents have. But I think I'm pretty clearly going to put that Esper Sentinel down turn 1. For the purpose of the playtest, we'll say we don't get any extra draw, but you know, it is an option, right? That our opponents could bring us down, right, some extra cards with Esper Sentinel. But turn 2, I think we just get Arcane Signet down. I think my goal here is to get Alela down turn 3, which is possible here. And the reason I waited to play this Mox Amber is because now I can play it for free and get a fairy. I could tap it this turn and have a legendary, but the point is that I got to put it down and get the fairy as soon as Alela comes down. And now having a mana up, you know, it could scare someone. You might think I have some removal in my hand, counter spells, you know what I mean? And you at least get to leave that up. Coming back to turn 4, we ran out of lands in our hand, but that's okay because we have lots of mana rocks to play. So 5 mana at the moment. Remember, we have the Amber going for all of Alela's color. I love the idea of the Phyrexian Altar. We just need a few more fairies first. We'll play the Signet, 4 mana. I'm thinking of like the Mirror Maid as Arcane Signet, right? Just make some more mana, get down the plating. So now the goal here is just to get. Actually, I think our better play than the plating is the Greaves and get it attached to Alela just to protect her. And now you've got a couple fairies down this turn that are going to be hopefully buffed in the next few turns after we draw into some more things. And you know, get Alela in for some attacks. Now you have these fairies that on future turns we can get in attacks with. All we're really looking for now is a way to draw some cards. Oh, well, maybe it's time that we move those Greaves just for a turn so that we can get the All That Glitters on there. Play the plating. I think I would move it here and put the All That Glitters on there. Because that's what 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 this turn for the All That Glitters. So it's a 10, 11 right now, right? And then actually, right, you can put the Greaves back because the aura only targets right when it's there. But you know, again, you make a huge attack this turn. The only reason I might think about leaving it off is because it was 2 for that. You could cranial plating this on if we know it can't be blocked, right? We said it was a 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We get up to a 17 just by doing that. You know, gain a ton of life, not just absolutely take a big hit at somebody. 5, 6, 7, 4. Sorry, 6, not 7. Sorry, but still, the point is take a big attack at somebody. And all we're missing this one truly is just card draw. It's kind of unfortunate, but there are those games where you don't see your key pieces, and we just, I guess, rock this until the wheels fall off until we do that. If somebody wipes the board, and we've got a nice amount of mana to bring Alela back. But again, good in the sense that Alela is becoming a threat this time, but bad in the sense that we didn't see our card draw. But again, you sometimes aren't going to see it, and it's how do we operate when we don't see it. Here, keeping a 4-lander with Soul Ring. So, unfortunately, at the moment, we're not looking at a turn 3 Alela, but we would be looking at a turn 3 Alela either way. But of course, the Zora Signet means it's going to be a turn 2 Alela. And I know there's probably the argument not to play the Soul Ring in the Zora Signet, or to save some artifacts to play once Alela comes down. But the truth is, having the turn to Alela here is actually huge because now we have 6 mana, right? And I can play multiple things this turn. Blind Obedience to slow my opponents down. Actually, sorry, we would play the Caretakers first, then the Blind Obedience, so that we get to draw off the Caretakers talent, right? So that's 5 mana, right? We made a couple Faeries. Now we're in great shape where we have to get ahead. And so now as we're untapping on turn 4, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana, and we can just keep getting things in. Commander Sphere, draw a card, right? Off of Caretaker's talent. Anointed Procession. Sorry, the make is on cast, so right, we don't get double there, but again. Another one there. Alela can get in again this turn. And now we're in great shape just making double Faeries. We can start playing these intangible virtues. Yes, I mean, Alela is going to be a huge threat now for getting removed. But the point is now we have enough mana to bring her back down if it truly does happen. And so if she does come back to our turn here in turn 5, I think it's intangible virtue to get 2, draw a card. At this point, I'd kind of think about sacking the Commander Sphere just to draw a card, just to see if we can brute force our way into more. But if I do that, I could actually level this class all the way up if I wanted to. I mean, I only have one more artifact to play, so I think I would just level the class the whole way up, make another Fairy, which will actually make 2, sorry, when it levels as well, and just take a big attack here again this turn. Again, the hope is that we would have seen a card draw outlet or a protection outlet, but we do still have a ton in our hand. And at this point, I don't think single target removal on Alela is going to be enough with how much we have sitting here. This doesn't need our commander. This doesn't need our commander. So there's still a +3/+3. And in this turn, we draw the Kindred Discovery, which is probably more than enough here. We make 2 on cast, so we don't get to draw off the Discovery. But we are going to go ahead and draw from the Talon. And then I think I would just go ahead and attack. Right? I guess we could dump the boots in just to see what we can get ourselves access to do before we get in. But I think that's more than enough. Take a huge attack. We draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think probably 7 or 8 cards this turn. Again, the goal here is just to get something in our hand to keep ourselves afloat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We paid 2 for the Greaves. I've got 2 left. 3 left, sorry. So I could play the Phyrexian Altar, right? Make 2, draw 2, and then we might be in good shape here. I guess all we need to do is we have plenty of mana, right? And we make more every time we cast something. We have the Biotransference and the Mycosynth, so it would actually just be finding the Time Sieve here and not decking ourselves out, right? So sack 4 of them, play the Biotransference, make 2 more, draw 2. Biotransference comes in, makes them onto artifacts, sack a couple more. I guess play the Opal, even though I didn't need to sack 4 to do that. And so the goal here would just, again, be playing things until we either we have multiple extra turn spells in the deck, find those or find the sieve, and we're just in killer shape here, just drawing through. And again, we have more than enough mana. Now you could, play something like the Gallery there. Play the Mana Rocks to give us more mana. And the truth is, we just dig through the deck at this point into what we want to see. And I won't keep going, but I think you can kind of get my point. Yes, obviously counter magic and all that good stuff. But the truth is, once you see the transference of the Mycosynth, then all we need is, that Time Sieve. And I think we have more than enough to have fun there. So let's get into playtest number 3. Keeping a 4-lander with the Talisman, Dawnmaker's Shop, and a Swords to Plowshare. So not a bad starting hand. We're looking at a turn 3 Alela at this point. We'll crack the Marsh Flats to go get our Tri-Land. Again, we have nothing better to do turn 1, so might as well get the party started. We see a Fierce Guardianship there. Of course, great to draw. Going to start protecting ourselves once we get Alela down, by being able to protect Alela for some removal, because she's going to be a lightning rod for it. Here you see Karn's Temporal Sundering, one of the extra turn spells we have in the deck, can bounce a pesky thing and take an extra turn here. here I'm thinking Commander Sphere, Fairy, Dollmaker's Shop, Fairy. Again, the Dollmaker Shop can be great to get some extra creatures on the board. We just don't have mana for that Porcelain Gallery just yet, but we can unlock it later. And then turn 5, 5, 6, 7. We're just 1 mana off of that Legion Loyalty, right? We do have enough to extra turn off the Karns, but I don't know that we want to do it just yet. I think if I'm going to do nothing else, I guess I might as well just unlock the gallery this turn and just attack. I guess I could draw with Castle Lochthwain if I wanted to, because there's a solid chance that Alela could just get it back. But I think I'd rather just unlock the gallery this turn. You know, take a bigger attack, gain some life back. Coming to the next turn, there's Cathar's Crusade, which is nice. Unfortunately, I just would need to multiple spell to make it really worth it. I think it's not bad, right? Play it, make the fairy. This won't see the fairy come in, but that's okay because it's uncast. 2 mana left. I mean, I could always just sword somebody during my turn to make a fairy, right? Get counters on all my fairies. Now they're 5/5 bases that have the +1s on them, so they're 6/6s. And here, if I was worried about it, I could sack that Commander Sphere to draw a card. I don't think we need to. I think the attacks are more than worth it. And then there's the 8th mana for Legion Loyalty, which is what I would happily play, get the counters on all of them, and then just go attacking. You can attack with the Alela. Alela will trigger the Cathar's Crusades off the Myriad, but of course one of them will die. But the point is, you have 6 of these attacking one person. These 5 get copies attacking the other 2 people. And Alela, so you have 12 Cathar's triggers. They're all huge in the air. And I mean, if no one has a stop for this or this, you know, it's just hard for our opponents. Again, a little Christmas landy, but the truth is, in most of the matchups you're playing into here, if somebody doesn't have removal for Alela at the right times, the game just could be really brutal. But let me know, what do you think of Alela down in the comment section below? One of my only bracket 4 decks. You'll see the other one next week when we talk about Ovika. And